Look out, gals, the energy in Snippet Land is getting hotter and hotter. Welcome to Sobriety Snippets for Ambitious Women Over 40, where we elevate our mindset to change hangovers for higher consciousness, one powerful snippet at a time. I'm Becca Jacobson, and I am so glad you're here with me on the 9th of January, 2026, as we elevate our energy. That's what we're doing. This week, we've been talking about states or moods or levels of consciousness or ways of being, whatever you want to call them. Just for simplicity, we'll call them states. This is a way you show up in the world. On Monday, we talked about them in general, the idea that they exist. I gave you the metaphor of a gigantic mansion or a castle that we live in, and each room represents a different state of being. And all we have to do really is open the door and go from one room to the next. Well, I said something like that on Monday. Today, I'm going to elaborate on really how do we change rooms. On Wednesday, we talked about blind spots and how we end up in states and not even aware that we're in them. And today, we're going to talk about, okay, well, fine, Becca. Now I understand states, moods, whatever you like to call them. How the hell do I get out of it? And why is it so hard? Why do I just keep hanging out in the same room when I don't want to be in that room anymore? I recognize that I'm angry most of the time, but I just keep being angry. How do I change states? And why is it so difficult? That's what we're talking about today. By the way, anger, of course, was just an example. So first, let's talk about why we seem to get stuck in states. Well, first of all, we're unaware of them. So you're already taking the first step towards changing this. Most of us don't walk around saying, oh, I'm just in a state of anger, or, oh, I just tend to be, most people are unaware. They just are who they are, who they are. This is who I am. This is me showing up in the world. This is how I show up, right? And when we're unaware, there's nothing we can do about it. Other people know we're in a state. Other people recognize us as being like this or like that. But we generally don't see it. So you've already taken the first step forward by going, okay, well, this is a state and I can change it. Fair enough. I mean, how freeing is that, right? So first of all, awareness. Now we've got awareness, then what happens? Despite awareness, we can get pulled back in. It's like emotional states have gravity. They suck us right back into the vortex. And the next thing you know, there we are living in anger again, or anxiety again, or fear again, or resentment again. It's like that groove in the mind that we talked about, the neuroplasticity of the mind, where we get thought grooves and the mind will replay those similar thoughts over and over, and thoughts are tied to emotions, and bam, you're in a state, right? So there's energy behind emotional states, and awareness alone will not move us from one state to another. We need awareness. So I'm glad we got that done, but we need more than that. What actually helps a state shift? Well, there are several things. One thing we can recognize is that the body itself, the nervous system, it can either help or hinder us on this. It either keeps us stuck in the state or it can help us move out of a state. But here's the thing to note about this. The body enters the state before the mind does. Let me say that again. This is important. We don't notice this. We really don't. Your body is in a particular state, emotional state, before the mind is. That's why we often think, why am I thinking like this again? Why am I angry again? Why am I anxious again? Why am I, right? Partly, of course, it's habit, habitual thinking, but the body itself, the nervous system has entered a particular state and then the mind will follow. The breath changes, the muscles tighten, your nervous system is activated. This is very obvious when we're in trigger mode. It's 4 p.m., it's time for a glass of wine. You might not really want to drink, you said you weren't going to, but there you are. The day's been long, the nervous system is on edge, all the nerves are on the outside of your body, and you're like, I need a drink. This is a very familiar state and one that we have to recognize. And when we recognize that the body gets there before us, then we can counteract it. We can cut it off at the pass, so to speak, through intentional breathing and other ways that we can settle our nervous system. We can preemptively settle ourselves through practices that are very powerful, practices designed to keep that nervous system from going off on a tangent and bringing the mind with it. And that is what I teach in my coaching. That is one of the many things I teach in my coaching. It's, in fact, the first thing that I cover when I help women, how to settle that nervous system. Because if your nervous system is on edge, we can't go any farther than that. Remember, emotional sobriety or emotional growth, which is what we do here in Snippet Land, is a journey. And the first thing we have to do is learn to settle the nervous system. So that is what I teach. In fact, it's the 9th of January right now, and I'm 9 days into the juicy January 2026 sobriety challenge for 40 plus women. Lots of women in there. We're getting juicy together, but this is the first thing I taught them last week on our first class. It was how to settle the nervous system, among several other things. So we need strategy to settle the nervous system so that the body doesn't pull the mind along and into a state that we don't want to be in. Number 2, we try to think our way out of a body-based state. And that's why we want to learn how to settle the nervous system. So first of all, the body's entered the state and it drags the mind and heart with it. Then we get there and we try to think our way back. That won't work. We try to analyze. We argue with ourselves. We judge ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We promise to do better later. We shame ourselves. We regret yesterday. These states, all of those types of thoughts, which we all try and use, that was how I tried to get free for 30 years, over 30 years. None of those things worked, but that's what I kept doing because I don't know what else to do, right? These types of thoughts will not pull us out of a state. States do not respond to logic. If you happen to have your journal nearby, write that one down. Emotional states do not respond to logic. Right? And yet that's what we try and do. But here's the reason in this. No, ain't going to work. Sorry, dear. Not going to happen. They respond to regulation, awareness, and interruption. We've already talked about regulating the nervous system. I haven't told you how because I don't have time in one snippet, but I've talked about it in other snippets. And we've talked about awareness. You've got to be aware you're in a state. You've got to be aware that the nervous system is on fight or flight. And interruption, that's number 3. When we start recognizing that that we're in a state, an undesirable state, we notice that the nervous system is on edge. We can settle the nervous system through a breathing practice or a grounding practice. And then we use interruption. What do? We turn around and head in the opposite direction. The moment you can notice a state, you're no longer completely inside of it. If you can say to yourself, oh, I'm in a state of anger right now, you have already broken the spell. You can't really continue to be, you can continue to be angry, but it is lessened when you're thinking to yourself, why am I so angry? Why am I so frustrated? Why am I so irritated? Why am I so anxious? Whatever the state is, awareness will bring you out, but it's not enough. The way we actually exit is by changing the conditions. When the body softens and the breath slows, when your attention widens, or a change of environment, or connection with others, these are all ways we can pull ourselves out of states. And all of these happen inside of community, automatically. So if you don't have community and support in your world yet, this is yet another of the million reasons why we need support, because we walk through that quote unquote support door. It could be a virtual one. It doesn't matter. And all of a sudden we're connected. All of a sudden we hear other people and we see a mirror of ourselves happening. It's very powerful. So the question today was, why do I get stuck in states and how do I start to get out of them? Well, the answer it was the quiz and review, gals. Number 1, we get stuck mainly because we're unaware. We're just unaware. We're just walking around angry and we didn't even know we were angry. So awareness. And number 2, a big one for starting to regulate your states is the nervous system practices, right? We want to learn breathing. We want to learn grounding. But the work isn't to never enter these states again. That would be, I don't know, I guess if you want to be a saint in this life, maybe you'll get there. We all enter states. The work is to recognize them sooner, stay kinder while you're there, and know how to support yourself as they pass. That is a worthwhile undertaking for this year. In fact, for longer than this year, for a life of happiness and peace. If you're growing towards the sober life you want, that is a worthwhile practice. It is what I practice over and over week after month after year. It is how I move through this world, recognizing I'm in a state, having the strategy, skill, and support to move through that state without beating myself up, and carrying on and growing to higher and higher states. My dears, that is the key to happiness. It's all right there. There's nothing else to do. Nothing else to do. If you thought that what you had to do was change others or change your circumstances or change your job, or I don't know what you thought you might need to change, I'm here to tell you all you have to do is change your states. Please let me say that again. Please hear it, love. All you have to do is change your own state, and your whole world will change. And if you're tired of trying to do this alone, today would be a great day to invite you into the Sacred Mirror. It's been closed for quite a while. I'm opening the doors today for a little while. The Sacred Mirror is a simple online forum where you share with me and me alone a tiny bit of your story, and I respond by sending you back a personal voice note, a reflection, not advice, not a sales pitch, a personal reflection to help you see a blind spot. Thanks for popping in. Be sure to come back next time so I can keep your head on straight. Sending you buckets of love.